Human beings are hardwired to protect the young. Biology has etched a specific exposure into our brains, a light meter that triggers the moment we see a child in distress. Large eyes, high voices, a sense of vulnerability. It's an evolutionary survival mechanism designed to lower your guard and protect the vulnerable. It's humanity's most primal setting. But what happens when that setting is turned against you? What happens when a predator uses the guise of a child as a filter, a mask to bypass your natural defenses? The black-eyed children aren't just a spooky story. They're exploiters of your deepest biological tendency. I'm the developer. My job isn't to tell you what to believe. My job is to take the raw, unprocessed data of the unexplained, the grainy eyewitness accounts, the archival stories, the latent histories, and run them through the chemicals until a clear picture emerges. Tonight, we're processing an image that most think is already developed and archived. We're often told the black-eyed children began in 1996 in a Texas parking lot, but if you look at the raw, unprocessed history of the world, you'll realize that we've been warned about these dark-eyed mimics for centuries. Tonight, we're digging past the internet legends to find the ancient negatives, the encounters that were recorded long before the internet. If we treat history as long exposure, we see that tales of these beings were being recorded long before we had internet forums or cameras to capture them. Before there were film or digital sensors, these encounters were etched into the verbal histories of our ancestors. Stories passed down from generation to generation, like a master negative that refuses to fade. Black-eyed kid isn't a modern invention. It's an image that's been sitting in the darkroom of human experience for generations. Long before we had the term BEK, the Haudenosaunee spoke of the Otkon. It was believed that a Satan-like entity, known as the evil-minded one, would mate with unwitting women of the tribe, producing offspring with black eyes and pale chalky skin. These children repeated themselves frequently, paced around nervously, and craved human flesh. These evil black-eyed kids caused havoc amongst their tribe and were often sacrificed for the good of the people. One of the first mentions of BEKs from the modern era takes place in rural Virginia in 1950. 16-year-old Harold lived in the area his entire life, so he knew everyone in the small town. One day when he stumbled upon a stranger on a familiar road, the figure caught his attention. He looked normal at a distance, just another subject in the frame. But as Harold approached and asked the boy if he was okay, the stranger didn't move, he didn't blink, he just stood there, underexposed against the afternoon sun, until he spoke a single, jarring demand.
I want to go to your house. Take me to your house.
That was when Harold's focus shifted. The boy finally looked up, and Harold saw his eyes. No iris, no white, just two twin voids of solid black. Harold, understandably frightened, thought about fleeing, but before Harold could even turn to run, before he'd even moved a single muscle, the boy seemed to read his thoughts.
Now don't you run away from me. You're going to walk me up to your house.
Overtaken by pure fear, Harold turned and ran for his life, and as he did, the human mask of the entity finally tore. Behind him he heard a scream, not a child's cry, but a high-pitched, mechanical shriek that Harold could only describe as sounding something like a bobcat. This wasn't just seen as a spooky tale to Harold's parents either. His father immediately grabbed his gun and went out to hunt the thing on the road, while his mother, sensing a darkness that no camera could capture, believed her son had stood face to face with the devil himself. In the 1950s, in the heart of Staffordshire, England, there's a stretch of woodland that doesn't just hold shadows, it seems to develop them. For decades, locals have reported a girl wandering the dense brush of the Chase. But this isn't your standard Victorian ghost story. Witness accounts from 1982 to as recently as 2014 all describe encounters with a mysterious child in the forest. They describe a girl, no older than 10, with skin like underexposed paper. But when she tilts her head, something's wrong. Where the iris and sclera should be, there's only a total lack of light. Pure, solid black. These entities have been appearing in our history for over 70 years. From the 1950s rural roads to the dense woods of the 1980s. They were already developed long before we had a name for them. 1996 wasn't the origin. It was just the moment the world finally noticed the image had been burned into the print. Now let's zoom in. When looking at the raw details of the modern negative, we see that these entities aren't just spooky. They're wrong. Witnesses frequently report that while these children wear modern clothes, hoodies, jeans, sneakers, the fabric is off. It's described as rigid, a material that looks like cotton but seems to behave almost like plastic. And their voices are monotone, their speech repetitive, with a misplaced maturity that doesn't belong in the dialogue of a 10-year-old child. Then there's biological effects, the way they seemingly read thoughts without permission. What's called threshold nosebleeds. Witnesses who, while standing behind a locked door, experience a sudden metallic-tasting bleed and intense ear pressure. It's as if the very air around the entity on the other side of the door is being compressed, shifting the atmospheric exposure of the entire room. Now we move the film into the chemical bath. This is the dark room, the place where we try to make sense of the negative. If these entities have been with us since the days of the Otkon, they aren't a new mystery. They weren't something created on an internet forum in the 1990s. They are an ancient mystery that has simply updated its filter for the modern age. The bath is cold and the image is set. We might never have a positive proof of what the black-eyed children are, or where they originally came from. But the stories they leave behind are a permanent print in our modern mythology. They're the shadows that don't belong in the frame. The long exposure of a predator that has learned exactly which buttons to press to manipulate humanity. So next time you hear a knock in the middle of the night, don't just wonder if the stories are real. Ask yourself if you're ready for the exposure. Because once you let that kind of light in, the image can never be undeveloped. Developed in the dark, revealed in the light. I'm the developer, and the frame is now yours. See you for the next roll.